The alien scanner didn't just beep. It screamed. Red lights flashed. Sirens wailed. Captain Alex Mercer stood frozen in the glass tube, confused. He thought it was a simple security check. But the aliens on the other side were looking at the monitor in pure horror. They didn't see a human. They saw a hive. The machine detected 39 trillion living creatures crawling inside his gut, his blood, and his skin. To Alex, it was just bacteria. But to the aliens? He was a walking biological weapon. The Gliese Citadel was known as the most perfect place in the galaxy. It was a masterpiece of white walls, bright lights, and absolute silence. There was no dust in the air. There was no dirt on the floors. The aliens who lived here, the Gliese, were obsessed with purity. They lived their entire lives inside sterile bubbles, terrified of germs and bacteria. To them, a single cough was a deadly weapon. Into this spotless world walked Captain Alex Mercer. He was a human, and he was tired. He had traveled for weeks to be the first diplomat to greet this species. He adjusted his jacket and looked at his heavy boots. They looked dirty against the shiny, perfect floor. He felt out of place, but he smiled, ready to make a good impression. An alien guard, tall and very thin, stood behind a glass wall. He pointed a long, gray finger toward a scanning chamber. It looked like a simple glass tube. Alex nodded politely. He assumed it was just a standard security check, like a metal detector at an airport. He had nothing to hide. He stepped inside the tube, and the glass door slid shut with a soft hiss. He stood still, waiting for the scan to finish so he could get a cup of coffee. A blue laser light moved down his body, scanning him from the top of his head to the soles of his boots. Alex tapped his foot, waiting for the green light to signal that he was clean. But the green light never came. The machine suddenly made a deep, grinding noise. The soft hum turned into a loud, screeching alarm that echoed through the entire station. Red lights began to flash violently inside and outside the tube. Alex covered his ears, looking around in confusion. He checked his pockets quickly. Had he forgotten a pocket knife? Did he have a piece of metal on him? He looked through the glass, expecting the guard to reset the machine. Instead, he saw pure panic. The aliens on the other side were not fixing the machine. They were running away. The medical officer stared at the monitor screen, his face twisted in horror. He slammed a large red button, sealing the entire room with heavy blast doors. Armed guards rushed in, but they did not come close. They aimed their trembling weapons at Alex from a distance. The medical officer grabbed a microphone, his voice shaking with fear. He screamed that a biological disaster had been detected. Alex looked at the large screen on the wall to see what they were afraid of. The scanner had produced a 3D image of his body. But inside the image, there were millions of glowing red dots. They were in his gut, on his skin, and in his mouth. The machine was counting them rapidly, the numbers scrolling too fast to read. To the human, this was normal. But to the aliens, the scanner said only one thing: this creature was not one being. He was a vessel carrying trillions of living monsters inside him. Inside the scanning room, the situation quickly changed from a security check to a full-scale military lockdown. Thick, yellow containment gas filled the space between the glass tube and the heavy blast doors. Alex coughed and waved his hand in front of his face, but he was trapped inside the force field. Through the haze, he saw the aliens returning. They were no longer wearing their crisp white uniforms. Now, they were dressed in bulky, heavy hazmat suits that looked like giant metal bubbles. They moved slowly and clumsily, terrified that even a single molecule of air from Alex's chamber might touch them. They looked at the human not as a diplomat, but as a biological bomb waiting to explode. The alien commander stepped forward, his voice crackling through a speaker inside Alex's glass cage. He demanded to know why Alex had brought a biological army to the Citadel. Alex was confused. He looked at his empty hands and shook his head. He tried to explain that he came alone, but the commander pointed a trembling finger at the large monitor. The screen displayed the scan results in high definition. It showed the trillions of microscopic organisms living on Alex's skin, inside his stomach, and in his blood. To the aliens, these were not simple germs. They saw 39 trillion individual life forms, all moving, eating, and reproducing inside the human's body. The commander read the data aloud, his voice filled with disgust and horror. He explained that on their planet, all life was singular. If a bacteria entered their body, it meant death. They could not understand how Alex was still standing. They believed that the millions of creatures inside him were eating him alive. They thought Alex was a walking corpse, a zombie controlled by a hive of microscopic monsters. The aliens backed away as Alex opened his mouth to speak. They feared that if he spoke, he would spray millions of these soldiers into the air to attack the station. Alex finally realized what was happening and let out a nervous laugh. He tried to explain that this was normal for humans. He told them that these tiny creatures helped him digest his food and kept him healthy. He used the word symbiosis, explaining that they lived together in peace. This only made the aliens more terrified. The idea that a dominant species would willingly let filth live inside their own internal organs was madness to them. The commander looked at his soldiers and made a grim decision. They believed Alex was not a man, but a vessel for a plague. They began to discuss the only safe option left, ejecting the human into the cold vacuum of space before the monsters inside him could escape. The atmosphere in the sterile medical room turned deadly cold. The Gliese commander's hand hovered over a glowing yellow lever on the control panel. This lever controlled the emergency airlock. If he pulled it, the glass floor beneath Alex would instantly open, and the human would be sucked out into the freezing, silent darkness of deep space. Alex saw the commander's hesitation. The alien was not being cruel, he was simply terrified. He genuinely believed that killing this one human was the only way to save the thousands of lives on the station from the invisible army living inside his gut. Alex knew he had to speak quickly. He pressed his palms against the glass, leaving a greasy smudge that made the guards flinch in disgust. He shouted that he was not sick and that they were making a terrible mistake. Alex tried to use simple logic to save his own life. He spoke slowly, hoping the universal translator would convey his meaning correctly to the frightened aliens. He explained that without these bacteria, he would actually die. He told them that his body was like a garden, and these tiny creatures were the gardeners. They broke down the food he ate so his body could use the energy. They fought off bad germs that tried to invade. He called them his partners, not his parasites. But the concept was too strange for the Gliese to understand. Their biology was pure, fragile, and sterile. To them, a body was a holy temple, and Alex was describing his body as a crowded, dirty city full of wild animals. The commander lowered his hand from the lever, but he did not look relieved. He looked even more suspicious. He asked a question that chilled Alex to the bone. If these creatures were Alex's partners, did they obey his commands? The aliens began to guess wildly. They wondered if human emotions controlled the bacteria. If Alex got angry, would the trillions of soldiers inside him burst out and attack the guards? If he felt sad, would he release a toxic cloud? They viewed him as a biological wizard who could summon plagues with a single thought. The guards adjusted their weapons, setting them to burn mode, terrified that any sudden movement from Alex was a secret order to attack. Alex realized that logic was failing. The cultural gap was too wide to cross with words. He slumped against the glass wall, feeling defeated and exhausted. The aliens took his silence as a sign of planning. The scientists behind the heavy glass began typing furiously on their data pads, running simulations. The computer predicted that if Alex's containment suit, his skin, was cut or breached, the bacteria would multiply and cover the entire station within hours. The fear in the room was thick and heavy. Just as the commander prepared to give the final order to open the airlock, a deep vibration shook the floor. The lights flickered. Somewhere far away in the station, a different warning siren began to wail. The attention of the guards shifted from the monster in the glass cage to the ceiling. Something else had hit the station. The red alarms changed to a flashing purple light, signaling a critical hull breach. A small meteorite, no bigger than a human fist, had smashed through the thin outer wall of Sector 4. The Gliese Citadel was built to be clean, but physically, it was fragile. The rock had shattered the delicate air filtration pipes. The commander forgot about Alex for a moment and turned his attention to the main security screen. He watched in horror as his soldiers in Sector 4 began to stumble and fall. The meteorite was not just a piece of rock. It carried a passenger. It was covered in a fine, fuzzy blue dust. This was an ancient space mold, dormant for thousands of years in the cold dark, now waking up in the warm, oxygen-rich air of the station. To a human, this mold was nothing more than a mild annoyance. It was no different from the dust found in an old attic or the mold on a piece of old bread. But to the Gliese aliens, whose bodies had never fought a single germ in their entire history, it was a weapon of mass destruction. The station's ventilation system picked up the blue spores and blew them rapidly through the corridors. The dust reached the medical bay within seconds. The guards outside Alex's glass cage started to panic. One by one, they dropped their weapons and clawed at their throats. The mold was attacking their lungs instantly. Their advanced hazmat suits had been damaged during the chaos, or perhaps the spores were small enough to slip through the filters. Alex watched the disaster unfold from behind his glass wall. He saw the blue dust drifting through the air like thick smoke. A vent above his glass cage clicked open due to the power failure, and the contaminated air hissed inside his prison. The alien commander screamed, thinking he was watching the human die. He expected the infested man to rot instantly upon contact with the alien fungus. Alex took a deep breath. He inhaled the ancient space mold. He blinked and rubbed his nose. He felt a tiny tickle in his throat, and he coughed once. That was it. His body's immune system recognized the weak invader and destroyed it in less than a second. The aliens were dying on the floor, their skin turning a sickly shade of violet. They gasped for air, looking up at the glass cage, waiting for the human to fall. But Alex stood tall. He rolled his shoulders and looked around, completely fine. The irony was brutal. The aliens had spent an hour terrified of the bacteria inside Alex, calling him a monster. Now, a real biological threat was killing them, and the infested human was the only living thing strong enough to breathe the air. The dirty biology they hated was the only thing keeping Alex alive. The medical commander lay on the floor, gasping for air. His skin was turning a deep, sickly purple as the space mold shut down his respiratory system. He looked up at the glass cage with dying eyes. Inside, the human was pacing back and forth, completely unaffected by the deadly blue dust swirling around him. The commander finally understood the truth. The sterile environment of the Citadel was not a shield, it was a weakness. By living in a bubble, the Gliese had made themselves defenseless. With his last ounce of strength, the commander reached up and slammed his hand onto the emergency release button. He expected the human to run away and save himself. He expected the monster to escape. But Alex did not run. The glass wall slid open with a loud hiss. Alex stepped out into the contaminated medical bay. The surviving guards flinched and tried to crawl away, terrified that Alex would finish them off. To them, Alex was a biological titan walking through a storm of poison. Alex ignored their fear. He knelt beside the commander and checked the alien's pulse. He realized quickly that the aliens had no white blood cells to fight the infection. Their bodies did not know how to wage war on a microscopic level. But Alex's body did. Inside his veins, a war was already raging. His immune system had identified the alien mold, tagged it as an enemy, and was currently slaughtering it by the millions. He was a living factory of antibodies. Alex grabbed a sterile syringe from a nearby medical tray. He knew he had to act fast. He rolled up his own sleeve and jammed the needle into his arm, drawing a vial of his own dark red blood. The aliens watched in stunned silence, too weak to protest. They saw the human hurt himself to save them. Alex ran to the chemical synthesizer on the wall. He was not a doctor, but standard diplomatic training included basic emergency biochemistry for situations exactly like this. He placed his blood sample into the machine and commanded it to isolate the antibodies, the tiny warrior cells that were currently eating the mold inside his body. The machine whirred to life, processing the human blood. Within moments, it produced a clear, golden serum. This was the antidote, made from the very thing the aliens had feared, the biological chaos of a human being. Alex loaded the serum into an auto-injector and ran back to the commander. He pressed the device against the alien's neck. The commander tensed, expecting death. Instead, a warm sensation rushed through his body. The borrowed human antibodies surged into his system, attacking the mold with a fury the aliens had never seen. The purple color began to fade from the commander's face. He took a deep, clear breath. The infested human had just shared his infestation, and it was the only thing that kept death away. The recovery was slow but miraculous. One by one, the Gliese crew members gasped for air and sat up. The golden serum, synthesized from Alex's own infested blood, had hunted down the alien mold and destroyed it completely. The medical bay, once a place of panic and death, was now silent. The yellow containment gas was vented out, and the red warning lights turned off. Alex sat on a sterile bench, rolling his sleeve back down. He was tired, but he was alive. The guards, who had wanted to shoot him just an hour ago, now stood at a respectful distance. They did not aim their weapons at him. Instead, they held them low, bowing their heads in a mixture of gratitude and terrifying awe. They no longer saw a dirty creature, they saw a living miracle. The way the Gliese looked at Alex had changed forever. Before the incident, they viewed his body as a trash can filled with germs. Now, they understood the truth. A human body was not a victim of bacteria, it was a fortress. The commander realized that humans were constantly fighting a microscopic war every second of their lives, and they were winning. Alex walked through the station freely now. The aliens parted like a wave to let him pass. They whispered to each other that the human was a biological titan. He was a creature that could walk through plagues and poisons without even blinking. His blood was a medicine, and his breath was a shield. The fear remained, but it was now a fear mixed with deep respect. News of the incident traveled quickly to the Galactic High Council. The file on humanity was immediately pulled up and rewritten. Previously, humans were listed as primitive bipeds, with poor hygiene. The new entry was marked in bold, red letters. Humans were reclassified as Class X bioweapons. The entry warned all other species that humans carried an internal army of 39 trillion soldiers. The file advised that no alien should ever engage a human in physical combat, not because of their strength, but because their biological defense systems were too advanced to defeat. Humans were the most dangerous, yet the most resilient, life forms in the known universe. In the station's cafeteria, the final test of this new relationship took place. Alex sat down to enjoy a small snack before his departure. He opened a container of yogurt, a food rich in healthy bacteria. The alien commander watched from the other side of the room, flinching slightly. He watched Alex swallow millions of bacteria in a single spoonful with a smile. To the alien, it looked like Alex was eating a grenade. The commander shivered and looked away. They would welcome humans into the alliance, certainly. But they decided, right then and there, that they would never, ever invite a human to dinner again.